You know, when a machine breaks down, let's say your car's engine, there's this like expectation of pure precision.
Right. It's just engineering.
Yeah, exactly. It's engineering. You hear a weird rattle, you take it into the shop, and the mechanic pops the hood, shines a flashlight at a frayed timing belt, and just says, "Hey, there's your problem."
Because it's entirely binary. The
Yeah.
part is either functional or it suffered a mechanical failure.
Broken or not broken, it's a clean fix. You swap out the belt, tighten some bolts, and the engine just purrs again.
We find a lot of comfort in that, I think. As humans, we really like things to be visible.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
want our problems to be easily categorized, diagnosed, and just permanently fixed.
But then, you step into the realm of human disagreement, and when you add totally different cultures into that mix, suddenly your little diagnostic manual is completely
It's
useless.
out the window.
Right. We're looking at a landscape of conflict that is incredibly murky. It's like you're trying to fix an engine where all the gears are invisible and they're constantly shifting shape.
That is honestly the ultimate diagnostic puzzle of human communication.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the smoke, you feel the heat of the argument,
Yeah.
but the fire itself is burning deep down beneath the surface.
Yeah.
It's fueled by all these historical, cultural, and psychological elements that you can't even see.
And that is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to basically shortcut your path to being well-informed on a truly universal human experience, which is intercultural conflict. Whether you are, navigating a tense office dynamic with an international team or trying to make sense of international news, or you're just insanely curious about why people argue the way they do, we've got you covered.
We really do.
We've gathered some comprehensive source material on intercultural communication to give you the actual tools to decode the hidden cultural forces behind every disagreement.
Because the goal here is to move past these superficial symptoms of an argument, like the shouting, the silent treatment.
He's door slamming.
Exactly. And finally understand the root causes that actually generate that friction in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because conflict isn't just about what people are fighting over right in front of you.
Right?
It's about the invisible cultural scripts they bring to the fight. And before we can even begin to, resolve a clash, we have to diagnose exactly what kind of conflict we are looking at and where it originated.
So to do that, we need a working definition of what conflict actually is.
Okay.
Fundamentally, it's the interaction of interdependent people who perceive an opposition of goals, aims, or values.
Meaning they need each other, but they want different things.
Exactly. And crucially, they see the other party as potentially interfering with the realization of those goals. And this dynamic, it permeates every single level of society.
I mean, from the ground up.
Right. Yeah, it happens interpersonally, like between two coworkers. It happens at the intergroup level, the interorganizational level between competing companies, and of course, internationally between sovereign nations.
And I think it's important to clarify that not all conflicts are built the same either. The sources point out that there are essentially three distinct types.
Right. The first one being effective conflict.
Yeah, and this is the messy one. It's driven by interpersonal tension, and it's largely emotional. This is where disagreements get super personal, feelings get hurt, and it just completely derails whatever you were trying to achieve.
Contrasting with that is cognitive conflict, which arises from perceived disagreements about viewpoints, attitudes, and opinions.
And this one is actually completely different in practice.
It is. What is crucial to understand here is that cognitive conflict can actually be incredibly beneficial for problem solving.
I love this distinction. To put it in perspective for you, cognitive conflict is like a really good creative brainstorming session. Sparks fly, people debate fiercely, and the ideas actually get better because everyone is fully engaging with the problem. Effective conflict, on the other hand, is when someone gets mad because they feel disrespected and just throws the whiteboard marker at your head.
That is a very vivid, if slightly dangerous way to look at it.
Well, it happens.
But you're right. You are separating the problem from the person in cognitive conflict, whereas effective conflict just blends them together.
And then we have the third type, right? Goal-oriented conflict.
Yes. This happens when people disagree about preferred futures or end states.
Can you give me an example of what a massive goal-oriented conflict looks like, just to ground it?
Sure. A profound historical example is the clash in Turkey following the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So in 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk became Turkey's first president.
Okay.
And he enacted this sweeping vision of modernity as the country's desired future. He aimed to build a strict secular state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he abolished religious courts, put education entirely under state control, and he even changed the written language from the Arabic alphabet to the Latin alphabet.
I mean, that is a staggering amount of structural change for a population to absorb all at once.
It really was.
Yeah.
And the friction occurred because the rural countryside didn't change as dramatically or as quickly as the urban centers.
Right, they had a completely different pace.
Exactly. So, two parallel cultures began to exist inside the exact same borders. A westernized secular urban culture and a local traditional rural culture that was deeply connected to Islam.
That is a massive goal-oriented conflict.
It's a conflict over the very identity, the soul, and the future direction of a whole nation.
Which leads us directly into the deep sources of these divides. Like, where do these fundamental disagreements come from? I know a major source is in-group and out-group bias, but how does that actually take root in a culture?
What's fascinating here is how powerful origin myths are in driving that in-group and out-group bias.
Origin myths.
Yeah, these are the ancestral stories a culture tells about itself. They draw very strict boundaries around who is us and who is them.
Oh, I see.
For instance, Italians might view themselves as direct descendants of the ancient Romans, or Greeks as the direct descendants of the ancient Greeks.
Even if the actual history is way more complicated than that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Even if historians and geneticists challenge the literal accuracy of an unbroken lineage, these origin myths form this powerful psychological consensus for national unity.
But I imagine that same unifying myth can be weaponized easily. Like, if you define us that rigidly, it makes it very easy to justify excluding them.
Tragically, yes. We see architecture and monuments often become targets because they are physical representations of those origin myths.
Right.
Consider the Mostar Bridge in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was a stunning piece of architecture designed by an Ottoman architect back in 1566.
Okay.
But in 1993, during the Bosnian War, the Croatian army deliberately destroyed it. And the destruction wasn't just like a tactical military maneuver. It was a targeted effort to erase a physical symbol of Bosnia's Muslim history. Today, the city remains culturally and physically divided between Croats, who are mainly Catholic, and Bosniaks, who are mainly Muslim.
It's a really stark reminder that when people argue, they aren't just fighting about the present moment.
Not at all.
They're often fighting about the past. Historical grievances and centuries-old antagonisms are massive drivers of conflict.
Absolutely. Think of the Zapatista uprising in Mexico in 1994. You had impoverished Mexican indigenous farmers fighting the government. On paper, it might look like a modern dispute over the NAFTA agreement.
Right, an economic thing.
But the roots were embedded in centuries of systemic poverty, landlessness, and marginalization, dating all the way back to colonial times.
It's never just the immediate issue.
Right. We also see historical grievances escalate to the darkest extremes, like the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, where ethnic Tutsis were slaughtered by Hutus. That violence was rooted in deep historical and colonial divisions that had been heavily manipulated over decades.
Yeah, and that specific tragedy really fundamentally shifted global politics. It sparked intense debates over the international community's responsibility to protect civilians.
It did. And beyond historical grievances, we have to look at political, territorial, and economic disputes as sources.
Sure, like the incredibly complex ongoing territorial dispute between Arabs and Jews over Jerusalem.
Exactly, where both groups possess deep religious and historical ties that define the land as their people's homeland.
Or, on a completely different scale, you have cultural pushback over language.
Language is actually a perfect example of an economic and political dispute morphing into a cultural one. In the UK, the gradual disappearance of the Welsh language led to a massive resurgence movement in the latter half of the 20th century.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was accompanied by a strong wave of Welsh nationalism. Today, through the devolution of political power, the Welsh language holds a much higher status. It's promoted heavily, it's supported by cultural icons.
So it shows how conflicts over cultural survival often manifest in fierce political fights over language rights and state funding.
Exactly.
What really stands out to me in all of this is the sheer scale of variance. I mean, we go from two people arguing in a break room over a whiteboard marker to entire nations fighting over centuries of ancestral history.
It's a wide spectrum.
It is. But no matter the scale, these disputes don't just explode out of nowhere. They brew over time. So let's trace the actual timeline of trouble.
If you track the life cycle of a dispute, it almost always follows a predictable 5-step pattern. This was originally mapped out by a sociologist named Louis Pondy.
Walk me through Pondy's stages, because I feel like this is where it gets really practical for diagnosing the tension in your own life.
Okay, so stage one is latent conflict. The conditions are completely ripe for an argument. You have interdependent people and incompatible goals, but the conflict hasn't actually started yet.
It's just sitting there.
Right. Then stage two is perceived conflict. This is the moment one or both parties finally become aware that these incompatibilities exist.
So stage 3 would be felt conflict. This is when you stop just observing the problem and start getting emotionally invested.
Yes.
You feel the tension, you start formulating your defense strategies in your head.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which boils over into stage four, which is manifest conflict.
The actual fight.
Right. The internal strategies are now enacted through actual communication. The fight is happening out in the open. And finally, stage five is the aftermath. This acknowledges that every conflict, even after it seems resolved, leaves a residue.
It changes things.
Yeah, it has short or long-term effects on the relationship going forward.
Now wait, is it possible to be in a conflict without even knowing it? Like being in that latent stage but happily ignorant that you're basically sitting on a powder keg?
Oh, it is incredibly common. Latent simply means all the combustible ingredients are sitting in the pot. They just need a specific trigger to spark the fire.
That makes sense.
There's actually a fascinating sociological case study that perfectly maps Pondi's stages. It's the Usedom Island beach clash.
Oh, this case study is incredible. Let's walk through this because it really illustrates the concept perfectly. So for you listening, Usedom Island is located in the Baltic Sea, and it's physically divided by a national border into a German side and a Polish side.
Right.
Now, for over 50 years, the German side of the island has had nudist beaches. Naked sunbathing is a totally normal, culturally accepted practice there.
Yeah.
That is our latent stage. The differing cultural values exist, but the physical border keeps everyone separated. Nobody is bothering anybody.
Against the trigger.
Yeah.
In January 2008, the Schengen Agreement takes effect, which removes border controls across much of Europe.
The borders just disappear.
Exactly. Suddenly, that physical barrier on the beach vanishes. Polish citizens can now stroll down the beautiful coastal paths right onto the German beaches. They look up and they see the nudists.
Oh, boy.
We have instantly entered stage two, perceived conflict.
And this is where the cultural clash just accelerates. Poland is a heavily Catholic country. For those tourists, nude sunbathing in a public walking area isn't just, like, unusual. It's completely culturally unacceptable.
Yes.
They are shocked. This is the felt conflict. Meanwhile, the Germans, who just want to enjoy their local beach exactly as they have for half a century, feel that the disapproving, glaring stares from the Polish walkers are incredibly intrusive.
Which inevitably leads to stage four, manifest conflict. The disapproving glances turn into verbalized frustrations. There's palpable tension on the sand and direct confrontations between beachgoers.
It's out in the open now.
Right. And finally, the aftermath. The local authorities actually had to step in. Their temporary resolution was to erect large bilingual signs in both German and Polish, specifically marking the boundaries of the nudist zones. It is a flawless encapsulation of how a dormant cultural difference that was separated by geography escalates into an active clash the moment those boundaries are removed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Once a conflict reaches that active manifest stage, the way we try to fix it, or the way we choose to fight it, depends entirely on our cultural programming. Basically, society divides into two very different cultural approaches to handling a fight.
That's right. The first approach views conflict as normal. This perspective is highly dominant in individualistic cultures, like in the United States or Western Europe.
Okay.
Conflict is seen as a necessary, even healthy opportunity for growth. It's a chance to renegotiate boundaries and release built-up tension. Direct confrontation is not only accepted, it's valued as a sign of honesty.
I like to think of this approach like pruning a tree. You have to actively cut away the dead branches, which seems violent to the tree in the moment, but it's the only way to ensure the whole thing grows back stronger and healthier.
That's a great analogy. But the second approach views conflict as destructive.
Right.
This is the prevailing view in collectivistic cultures, ranging from Amish communities to traditional Chinese culture. Here, conflict is seen as a severe threat to social harmony. Confrontation is viewed as dangerous, selfish, and ultimately ineffective.
So, using the tree analogy again, if individualists see conflict as pruning the branches, collectivists see conflict as poisoning the roots.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
You are damaging the unseen, underground network that keeps the entire forest alive. The belief is that the social system shouldn't be ripped apart just to accommodate one individual's grievances.
Exactly.
The individual has to adapt to preserve the established harmony.
And these deep-seated cultural views dictate how we behave when the pressure's actually on. Sociologists Blake and Moton developed a framework of 5 conflict management styles that illustrate the choices we make.
And those are
Avoiding, competing, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating.
Let's make this real for you, the listener. Imagine you work at an advertising agency. It's Friday afternoon. Your boss suddenly announces that you and a colleague have to come in on Saturday to finish a massive TV commercial pitch.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, worst nightmare, right? Neither of you wants to give up your weekend. Now, if you use your power as the senior team member to simply force your colleague to work while you stay home, you are using the competing style. It is highly assertive and offers zero cooperation.
Conversely, if you decide to avoid the confrontation entirely, sacrifice your own weekend, and let your colleague attend their pre-planned family event, you are using the accommodating style. You lose, so they can win.
Right, but if you sit down and negotiate, saying, hey, I'll work Saturday morning, you take Saturday afternoon, that's compromising. Both of you give up a little bit of what you want.
Right.
And if you sit down, look at the project timeline, and figure out a way to restructure the workload right now so that nobody has to come in on Saturday at all, that's collaborating. It takes the most effort, but it's the rare win-win.
Now, how we communicate during these negotiations varies wildly depending on our cultural background. In individualistic cultures, communication is highly direct.
Very blunt.
Yeah. Researchers note that Americans, for example, tend to use explicit words like absolutely, certainly, or just no. They prefer face-to-face negotiation.
Just hash it out.
Right. But collectivistic cultures use implicit language words like maybe, perhaps, or we will look into it to save face and avoid a blunt refusal.
Ah, I see.
They often prefer to avoid direct confrontation entirely, relying on a trusted, mutual third-party go-between to mediate the dispute quietly.
The irony here is just massive. If you're an individualist, what you might consider a healthy, direct clearing of the air, someone from a collectivistic culture might view as a destructive, relationship-ending disturbance of the peace. You think you're fixing the engine, and they think you are setting the entire car on fire.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this tension between direct confrontation and restoring harmony isn't just about office politics. It scales up to how entire nations heal after trauma.
How so?
Consider the concept of transitional justice. This is how cultures deal with legacies of widespread human rights abuses as they attempt to transition back to peace and the rule of law.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It is. It requires an immense, culturally sensitive balancing act. Do you aggressively prosecute every offender to seek objective truth and justice, which risks tearing the fragile society apart again? Or do you prioritize truth and reconciliation commissions that favor social harmony and collective healing? The cultural lens dictates the path.
So what does this all mean for us on a daily basis? I mean, we can't change how our opponents were culturally raised. If we are locked in a dispute with someone from a totally different background, how do we actually bridge this gap?
Well, we need a practical toolkit. A great place to start is Harrison Morgan's 5-step synergistic strategy.
Okay, what's that?
They studied the clash between American and British business cultures. From the American perspective, which heavily values aggressive competition and visible hustle, British business people might seem to lack drive or urgency. But from the British perspective, Americans can seem impetuous, impatient, and far too eager to sacrifice their quality of life just to please their superiors.
Right, so the solution isn't for the American to just try and act British or the British person to act American. That just builds resentment.
Exactly.
The synergistic strategy is about combining forces. You describe the conflict in a way both cultures understand. You analyze it from both viewpoints. And then you adapt, learning through empathy, to create a third shared culture strictly for that specific working relationship.
And to achieve that, there are 3 key communication strategies you absolutely must deploy. First, focus on common ground.
Okay.
Emphasize shared goals, like finishing the agency pitch or restoring peace to the neighborhood to reduce the heat of the immediate disagreement. Second, practice relational empathy. This doesn't just mean listening to the words. It means mindful listening to the emotions, the fears, and the cultural values hiding underneath those spoken words.
And third, develop a positive communication climate. A massive part of this is dealing with one issue at a time. If you are arguing about the Saturday shift and you suddenly bring up a mistake your coworker made 3 months ago, you will completely overwhelm the situation with historical grievances. You have to keep it focused.
Yes. And for those operating specifically across the individualist-collectivist divide, the researcher Ting Toomey provides some essential advice. If you are an individualist dealing with a collectivist, you absolutely must learn to save their face.
I always struggle with this concept. If I'm a naturally direct person who values getting to the point, how do I actually give face to someone without feeling like I'm just backing down, losing the argument, or frankly, being dishonest?
That is the core challenge for individualists, but you have to reframe it. Giving face isn't about losing. It is a strategic, long-term investment in the relationship.
Okay.
It's about maintaining a delicate balance between humility and pride. Practically, it means never pushing the other person into a rhetorical corner where they have no leeway to recover their public dignity.
So it's like realizing that sometimes the most powerful and effective thing you can do in an argument is to intentionally leave the other person an honorable way out.
Exactly. It might mean using informal go-betweens for low-grade conflicts before they become public embarrassments. It means tolerating their tendency to avoid direct conflict without labeling them as evasive.
Right.
You have to temporarily put aside your cultural need for explicit confrontation and learn to read the implicit, nonverbal messages they are sending you. It requires immense patience, but it shows a deep respect for their cultural need for harmony.
All right, let's bring this all together. We have covered a lot of crucial ground today. We've tracked conflict down to its deepest roots, from the power of origin myths to the heavy anchor of historical grievances.
We really spanned the globe.
We did. We walked through Louis Pondy's 5 stages, showing how a simple change in a border treaty can turn a latent difference over beach attire into a manifest culture clash. We decoded the deep cultural lenses, individualism versus collectivism, that dictate whether we see an argument as a healthy tree pruning or a destructive root poisoning. And most importantly, we've outlined a toolkit.
Finding common ground, practicing relational empathy, and mastering the strategic art of saving face.
By understanding these invisible cultural scripts, you are now equipped to see the hidden gears turning beneath the surface of any disagreement. You aren't just reacting to the loud symptoms anymore. You can actually diagnose the root cause, which makes you a vastly better communicator and a much sharper critical thinker.
Absolutely.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Our sources extensively discuss how deeply embedded our physical geography and ancestral history dictate our conflict styles. But we are living in a world that increasingly communicates through the internet. We are seeing the rise of borderless digital youth cultures and cyber communities where phenomena like flaming and online non-accommodation are creating entirely new social norms that have absolutely nothing to do with where you were born.
It's a fascinating and somewhat unpredictable frontier. It begs the question, how will this new globally connected generation redefine what it means to be in conflict?
Exactly. Will the old geography-bound cultural rules of saving face and indirect communications survive the digital age? Or is the anonymity of the internet forcing us all into a new, universal culture of high-speed, hyper-direct confrontation? Next time you see a massive argument unfold online, ask yourself what invisible cultural gears are turning here. Or has the machine fundamentally changed? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.